The Honourable Rick Mazza.
Thank you, Madam Acting President. I rise today to support this motion put forward by the Honourable Nigel Hallett, and I'll compliment him for bringing this matter once again to the House. I think it might be the third or fourth time that we've had this discussion in private members' business, and I compliment him for his persistence in keeping this important matter on the agenda. Members, we've had a horrific fire season this year, with a loss of property and a loss of life. And it's still not over yet. We had fires just 2 weeks ago in Harvey and Collie, and as of yesterday, another fire in Brunswick. And unfortunately, some of those fires have been contributed to them being deliberately lit, so it's very disturbing that someone would go out there and light fires in this environment. I'd also like to acknowledge those in the gallery today. It's not often that we get the public in our gallery to listen to debate, but that is the concern that the community has, that people have taken time away from their work and their businesses and their life to come here and listen to this debate today. A couple of days after the Yarloop fire, I drove through Yarloop. I managed to get through the back way, and it was very disturbing for me. My family moved to Yarloop in the 1940s, and my grandparents lived there for over 60 years. So there's a lot of childhood memories in Yarloop. So it was heartbreaking to go through that town and see it basically razed to the ground. And you know that town will never return to what it was. I know Alcoa has already said that they won't rebuild the 35 houses that they lost, and it's doubtful the town will ever recover to what it was once. But I'm not here to blame anybody today. We have a system, and that system is broken, and it's not from a lack of money, members. The emergency service levy for this year, this financial year, is estimated to raise some $320 million, an increase of over 10% on the previous year, so we've got an extra $31 million this year. So a substantial amount of money. Now, well, that's right. You know, there's certainly the resources there to improve our system. Now, as has been discussed at length, we haven't had mega fires. Well, we never had mega fires in Western Australia for nearly 40 years, since the 1961 Dwellingup fires and the subsequent 1962 Royal Commission. And one of the major recommendations from the Commission was that we prescribe burn 250,000 hectares of our forests each year. And at the Pemberton Community Hall, or Pemberton Mill Hall, there's a community meeting, the Department of Parks and Wildlife said that during the 60s and 70s, that quota went up to 350,000 hectares. So there was a very big effort to reduce the fuel loads in our forests. During estimates hearings over the last couple of years, I've been very alarmed to get answers back from Parks and Wildlife that they had been prescribed burning less than 50,000 hectares per year for quite some time, probably since the early 2000s. So a rough calculation would suggest that over the last 15 years or so, we're some 2 to 3 million hectares behind in our prescribed burning. A substantial amount of fuel loads. Now, there's been a lot said about climate change and a drying climate. But look, I remember the 60s and 70s. We had long, hot, dry summers. But we never had these mega fires because obviously fuel loads were being reduced. And the idea of a drying climate and drier winters actually counteracts the argument, because if we had wetter winters in the 60s and 70s, that would suggest that more vegetation would have grown, which would then dry out in the summertime. So if we've got drier winters, we should actually have less vegetation that has been grown. So I would be very disappointed if the Greens or others can't start pointing to climate change as the reason for these mega fires that we've been having. It's simply fire management and suppression. You know, in recent times, last 5 or 6 years, we've seen fires at Boddington, Northcliffe, Walpole, which we discussed earlier today, Roleystone, 2J Parkerville, Esperance, and more recently the Harvey Aruna and Yarloop fires. And that's all happened in very recent times. The current management system is obviously flawed. There's been some unsatisfactory outcomes of that. And I support the Honourable Nigel Hallett's suggestion that we set up a separate country fire service. I don't think it takes it away from the 1,100 paid emergency services personnel that we have. They do a fine job when it comes to emergencies or building fires in the city. But the country situation is quite different. It's mainly made up of volunteers, supposedly managed through local government. And those volunteers have a very strong sense of community. They know their terrain. They have a lot of pride. But with recent changes to our structure, we've had situations where the colour of the volunteers' trucks have been changed, or the logo on their uniforms have been changed without consultation to them. And I think that takes away from the culture of those volunteers and their sense of community and their sense of what they do. So it's a little bit disappointing to see in the media the exchange between Murray Cowper MLA, and I must say that I believe Murray Cowper did a good job for his district in monitoring those fires, and the Minister Joe Francis over some food that was supposed to be delivered, and of course Murray Cowper phoned 000, and the retort that came back from the Minister Joe Francis was, well, he should have rung for pizza. Well, look, members, if that's the fatigue management program, I'll help the Minister out. I've got some Domino pizza vouchers here, right? 3 for $31 delivered. I mean, it's got to be better than that. It's got to be better than ordering toasted sandwiches or pizza. The bottom line is, if those volunteers are on the fire front, they need to be able to be backed up with food, drink. Some of those people haven't had a drink for hours. And when they come back, have some consideration for those people and what they've been through at the fire front. Now, there has been a strong push for a country fire service, and as I said, I agree with the Honourable Nigel Hallett that a board made up of Parks and Wildlife, also local government and the volunteers would be a very good model. Now, I know that we have a review, another bureaucratic review being undertaken by Ewan Ferguson, and I welcome that. I mean, that's going to mainly focus on the Yarloop-Waroona fires. But we've already had a couple of bureaucratic reviews. I think it's time for a parliamentary review, being consistent with the petition that I read in, some 2,000-odd signatures on Tuesday, and there's more of those signatures that are rolling in. I don't know how I'm going to deal with those just yet, but there's obviously a lot of community concern. So we need to have a people's review where people can express their experiences and their concerns about these fires, and let's get it fixed.